what do you give them? How do you show your project? How do you show where it is in the city, how it uh, how it connects to the surroundings, to the other buildings, to the street, to, how their apartments are going to look like, how their amenities are going to look like. So whether or not you walk on the street and or you're online, and you would probably bump into some renderings shown by all the developers out there who, without the renderings, they wouldn't have, a product to sell. And the higher the stakes, the higher end the design, and the higher end the visuals. And there you have the power of a story or of a concept or of branding.
Welcome to CRE Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsuranceRisk.com. Today, my guest is Tudor Vasiliu. Tudor is an architect turned architectural visualizer and the founder of Panopticon, an award-winning high-end architectural visualization studio serving clients globally. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Tudor Vasiliu about virtual storytelling, how narrative-driven property marketing is replacing traditional showrooms. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Tudor Vasiliu. Welcome to CRE Radio.
Hey, Darren, so excited to be here. I just wanted to thank you and your audience for tuning in and allowing me to talk about the stuff that we like so much and we're all passionate about. And we'll discover that in a minute. So much appreciated. And let's do this.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk to you as well. And but before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. So as you said, I'm an architect. I come from a family of architects. My dad, my mom, they've been in through architecture school and then just doing architecture for the rest of their lives. And there was something definitely fascinating to a kid like myself growing up, seeing them, at their drawing boards and having long nights with friends, drawing these buildings and getting into the project design and everything. And that was way back in the 80s. Times have changed, but I decided, that's what I wanted to do, and got passionate of, to study design and drawing, and all of those things. And I ended up, becoming an architect eventually. And with that came this skill to show the projects, show the designs that we were doing, and whether I was using some pencil or some airbrush or later on the computer, it came from very early on. So it's kind of a virtual photography nowadays. You take a virtual camera, you go through virtual space, and you kind of bend time and space, use the elements, use the light in whichever way possible, and you just are free to show, design these visuals in a way that's interesting to people. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of my creative and professional experience. And fast forward to today, I run this studio that is a creative and technical studio where all architects and we cater to also architects and real estate developers across the world. We help them visualize their projects, create those renderings or animations or walkthroughs or um, those 3D VR experiences that you may have heard about, so they can make their or persuade whoever they need to persuade in city hall or stakeholders, or persuade a buyer, make a purchase, and so on and so forth. So we stand into this space which tries to convey the message of that project in a way that's also creative and not boring and beautiful at the end of the day. So that's kind of how I see my life so far.
No, it's well said and described as the kind of that interaction between the product being the whatever the end result is, and the and somebody, I mean, to be able to see and experience something that hasn't yet been built. I know myself, I'm not that
Exactly.
visual, so it's or I'm not able to, be creative. If you tell me to draw a line, I got to get a ruler out, kind of thing, to make sure it's a line there. But I'm wondering if you could just take a step back and kind of explain to the audience what was the model for and I guess more of the presentation before the more of the I guess electronic and the visual mediums that you talked about became available. You talked about your parents back in the 80s. I was in college in the 80s and had um, fraternity brothers that were uh, architectural students, and I remember long nights in the studio and these models they would create and all that. But it was very much tangible. It was something that you could put your hands on, and but long, painstaking hours to build, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Um, was that pretty much universal how the presentation was prior to all the technology?
That's still on today. I mean, whatever project you would see out there, it would be accompanied by a scale model, as they call it. It's a physical model. It's built out of whatever material you can think of, foam or resin or wood or metal, concrete, no matter what. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes they're just for marketing purposes, they want to exactly portray the project as it is, putting lights inside and so forth, or maybe a conceptual model which only speaks about the massing of it and showing it as an impressive, piece of an impressive object or shape, or emphasize, the certain features of that project. So that almost all the time accompanies any project that you would see in the public realm nowadays, or not even uh, be in the public realm. It allows whoever the investor is to understand, physically understand, and go, you know, take the model in his hands, or just walk around it, and with a naked eye, be able to just understand the volume, the spaces, materials, and so forth. So it is a creation that never left, since design has been called design, or you know, since the end ever since the first architects existed, they needed to illustrate, to show this idea somehow to the patron or whoever the investor was. So what better way to, create this small, large replica of the intended building and show it just like that. Bring in bring in that model to that person and let them, observe. And maybe, I mean, these models are always used alongside floor plans and elevations. So these are 2D drawings, like classical drawings. We used to use other tools back in the day. Now it's all BIM and ArchiCAD and AutoCAD and Revit. All of these tools are being used, but it at the end of the day, these are classical tools that people never let go of, and surprisingly or not, they're being used today. Techniques have changed. You now have 3D printers, large and small scale. Now you also have 3D printers that can print out buildings. So, and any architects out there who's ever studied architecture probably ended up building his or her own model at some point. And I know how hard it is. It was super rewarding, just gluing these pieces together, and at the end, not having it crumble on the table while you were presenting it. But it is a part of that history that kind of gets you used to just doing things by hand, and up to a certain extent, I believe that's not gonna go away. And I love that still, people with talent can still do painting and can still do drawing and can still do models.
Got it. So in Panopticon, are you then coming from the point where the architect has designed something and you've got all these different renderings, and then whether it be the physical or drawings or whatever, and then creating the more of the visual with more of the audio
Yeah.
visual technology? Is that kind of the model?
That's pretty much the model. So there's an architect. They have this project, whether that's a simple concept, can be a napkin drawing. I mean, we've produced visuals by napkin drawings that kept evolving, so to speak. And these things, I mean, this project would typically be either in a 2D form, so just a plain drawing, or a 3D model. The 3D model it's like a scale model, but in a digital virtual space. And once that project exists and it can be passed on to us, we would look at it and discuss with the architect, and discuss what the intent is behind these visuals that they're trying to produce, and using that model and starting to work on it in our tools of the trade, like 3ds Max, for example. We're big users of Autodesk's 3ds Max. We would start adding information to this scale model that's in virtual space. And we would add the exact specs for materials, for landscaping, for lighting. We can test scenarios, daytime, nighttime. We can go inside, we can go out in space or in a helicopter. So starting from that project, that's essential. It's a collaborative project, or a collaborative endeavor in the end. At the end of the spectrum, you got the developer. There's always someone investing in these things, and I want to point that out. The architects work for someone who is like an old time patron, right? We can look at them like that, and so on and so forth. We decide on the views and what the intent is, and we try and get creative and bring our own input and experience into the process. And I think that at the end we end up with these hopefully amazingly beautiful visuals, which are even still or in motion, so they can be photographs or films. We can blend in different techniques, drone footage, and filming on the street, and green screen actors and stuff like that, which is from the realm of cinema a little bit. But it's a pretty colorful and exciting process. for us. Pretty fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds, definitely a challenge, but also a reward of the, the ability to take somebody's concept and then to be able to, create the virtual. And I'm kind of curious, what's been the reception of your output as far as I guess twofold. One is the architects and the all the people on the design side, but then also the end, whether it be the buyer or the user of the facility that, you know, have you seen like wow, oh my God, this is, or tell me a little bit about the reaction you've seen.
Absolutely. So, back in the day, and I'm talking about the 2000s, or even earlier than that. I mean, this industry we're in is like 30 years old, max. So it's a pretty fresh um, industry. And the oldest studios are maybe born in the 90s, 95 or something. The probably the oldest visualization studio out there that deals with architecture, because you can have stuff that had to do with advertising, and people have been showing products forever now. But architecture in the industry in its physical and current form is very, very fresh. So with the old techniques, you still got the wow effect from people who were maybe unable to understand what they designed. So take an architect with a napkin drawing, and they didn't have the skill, or their team didn't have the skill to even create a 3D model of that thing. And we would come in and create, give shape to that idea of theirs. And once they would start seeing what it looks like, first of all, it was, I think the satisfaction, and they've all been like, wow, this is looking so good. How did you guys manage to convey, it looks real. How did you do that? And it's not just the 3D, it's also a bit of matte painting, as they call it in film production. You gotta get into Photoshop and slap on a realistic sky, or photograph trees, or actual 3D photograph people, and you kind of build up the story of that building or of that space. It can be a park, it can be an underground parking, or a bathroom. But they all have this, you got to give them life. So their reaction, and I love that, and it's so rewarding, as you said, because people get this revelation. Oh man, I've designed this and it looks like that, and I can do, I can start making amendments now, because I realize, may have not done the best thing or the best work with this corner here, or with the shape. And it's a back and forth process, which is pretty easy to do. And this is, the other part of the reward. You can get involved in the design process, and you can inform the design process with these visuals. On the real estate side, for them, the impact is huge, because without their buyers understanding what they're offering, it's super hard to sell a building or a multifamily building with just floor plans. And you could have investors who come in and say, what's the ROI, and so on and so forth. But for someone who's just looking for a home, what do you give them? How do you show your project? How do you show where it is in the city, how it, uh, how it connects to the surroundings, to the other buildings, to the street, to, how their apartments are going to look like, how their amenities are going to look like. So whether or not you walk on the street, and or you're online, and you would probably bump into some renderings shown by all the developers out there, who without the renderings they wouldn't have, a product to sell. And the higher the stakes, the higher end the design, and the higher end the visuals. And there you have the power of a story, or of a concept, or of branding, I've been very impressed by someone, a previous um, guy who was on your podcast, and he was discussing the role of branding for projects. He was purchasing um, already existing projects and you know, converting them and rebranding them, and the change is huge. So the narrative itself can raise the value of your property and position it correctly in the market. And we have a very small role, but I think it's an important one there, and we got to be real careful of how we tackle these problems. I mean, it's art, but it's also got to do with the project itself and with what the developer is eventually after in this whole adventure.
Yeah, I would have, excuse me, actually had a project where I forgot about it, but we did have a some sort of a rendering that was done, and it totally like made us like, oh my God, what we thought was going to make sense, didn't, it needed to be tweaked to actually get what we were intending to do. And I would think that the satisfaction from the end user buyer, whoever it is that's going to be investing in it, uh, to have more of a concrete sense of what the outcome's going
Yeah,
to be would be very reassuring. And I'm curious, I don't know that if prior to this technology and the modeling being available, uh, is there any way to measure people's satisfaction before this, post this, or does it improve the speed at which the sales cycle uh, happens when people have an actual more of a virtual model where they can actually, really understand what the product's going to be, or is that more of just like it just completes the presentation to where people are more confident or more understanding what the outcome's
got
going
it.
to be.
Got it. Um, so I do have real world examples because there have been experiences with clients who are saying, you know, guys, we have done these 360 walkthroughs through these apartments. It was a multifamily investment in Canada, and you know, they're they said they're expensive to produce and they don't really work. And I was looking at them and I was like, guys, maybe it's not the product itself. Maybe it's the design that was, you know, not apt to not up to standard. But what's interesting is that they kept a kind of a ledger of, you know, impact before, impact after, and they decided, you know, in terms of spend, maybe it's not worth doing it over and over again. So it's up to each developer. In this case, if we're keeping the conversation about developers because they're the ones putting in the money to build, each one, I think they should measure these things. From my perspective and from our perspective, from what I see across the board, the US and the rest of the world, you cannot sell without renderings, without explaining your project to your buyers. So those are an absolute must. The way you create them and the way you put them out there to bring your project to market and how you measure the impact should also be a part of you got to have KPIs and things of that nature. Really, you got to have maybe interviews with your clients. You know, go all the way, you know, UX style, and do all those things that would help your team understand what works and what not works. Not all markets are created equal, but to me, the understanding itself of what it means to communicate, if you're open, if you give a lot of information, if you don't withhold things, and if you do it in a truly realistic and honest manner, um, that's when people would gain some trust in you, and that's where, you know, the sale is made and the flip changes. And yes, it is a very pertinent and it's essential and to do, to measure. And I'm afraid that those numbers are not always accessible to us. And maybe we'll come across a project where the developers would say, you know, renderings don't count. We've sold everything just by, putting the word out there that the project is out, and that may happen, you know, with their connections, with their networks, they could do that. But it's always the trust level that's been, achieved between them and the buyer. And in some markets, the super competitive ones, you have to be competitive. So the measurements themselves, they will probably be a hard, information to get from most people because these are so much necessary, so necessary, and so it's a must do.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about as you're talking the actual the question's probably not really a fair one, because you'd almost have to have two identical projects side by side, one with it, one without it, to see, an
Yeah.
actual, and that's probably not likely to happen. Um, but as far as the uh, what you're doing, is there a scale where this makes the most sense? I mean, you talked about a drawing from a napkin. Talked about multifamily. Is there a scale where you find is kind of your sweet spot where developers are more inclined to invest and have the virtual presentation?
I would say, I mean, we've been busy with a ton of types of projects from, multifamily as always on our board, on our drawing board, but offices and industrial and, sports and health, like hospitals and things of that nature. So scale is relative because everybody kind of needs to take a look at the project before it gets to approval and then to construction. They need to make sure everything is okay. And then it may not require any marketing. For a hospital, you don't do that, or for a sports venue. But indeed, I mean, this is not something that should be. I mean, for us, any scale, we've worked with spaces as small as bathrooms and with huge master plans or island sized investments. So what I like the most is what I can say for myself, because the studio kind of can tackle any kind of challenge like that. And it may sound difficult to work with, hundreds of thousands of square miles, but actually I do love a good small multifamily project where you can, just get in there and show these beautiful spaces, show what it's like to wake up in the morning and look at the sunrise, or have your own backyard in there, or show the playgrounds, stuff that you could just go around like a typical photographer and just discover. And the discovery process, that is something that's super interesting. It's also for us. It's every time with new projects, we just start from scratch. And yeah, I mean, there's ways to do this. If you've ever seen Star Wars, just imagine those guys trying to create those, anything from the little places on Tatooine to the whole of space, to the entirety of or part of a chunk of that space. And for us, it's kind of the same job because people and these clients of ours, they would really need to look at the project from, various standpoints and see it from different altitudes in the air, or from just street level. And it's the same thing in the end. It's the story that they want to tell with that project, the identity that they want to give it, the vibe. that they want to put in there. That's in the end creating this experience for whoever's going to be watching it or seeing it or looking at it.
I'm curious, the role that the storytelling plays. Um, was this born out of uh, a quest from the design community, the architects, or the was it something that the buyer investor was expecting, or was it something that came out of more of a storytelling uh, angle that recognized there was this gap in the ability to tell the story that then introduced it to the community? Do you have any sense of that?
That's a great question, and part of that, from my standpoint. So I'm an architect, but I'm also a film buff, and I like theater, I like the arts, I like photography, and being in the industry for about more than 20 years now, I've seen it develop, and we always kept an eye on filmmakers and how they would create this magic of theirs, where you would get, you'd be glued to the chair and just watching something unfold in front of your eyes, and trying to get in the mind of the character, or them getting in your mind. So initially, the request is, I want to show this project. I want to know what it looks like. I want to, essentially make it beautiful. We have a great design. We want great visuals. At the end of the day, what is the difference between just a pure technical representation of that space, like a photograph, and a great photograph? What is the difference between just a walkthrough and a film that takes you there and makes you want to dream, or not want to dream, but actually makes you dream that you could be there? So I think both these virtual characters, the visualizer, and the developer and the architect, they started understanding the power that stories, they may not be complicated, but there could be something. You could see yourself as the person living there. Do you understand that person? Who your buyer is? Do you create the project around that person, or is just a project which is generic one? So once you involve your client, your end client, you get into their minds, and you may start to empathize with them. And that's where ideas come from. And once you get that idea, you can also test it, and the whole collaboration starts, boiling in a way, and starts growing and become more and more interesting. I mean, it's not just the creation of one side. It's not just the visualizer or the architect or the developer. It's a beautiful collaboration, and it brings to the table people that can be engineers, they can be photographers or videographers. And you know, I like to think that we are just co-creators of these things, and we try to get involved in their stories by bringing our own ideas in there, and you know, making this exchange is like jazz. When you make jazz, you look at the others, you look at the one next to you, one across from you, and maybe you want to improvise a little bit. And once you get into that vibe and that flow, you start to really make music.
That's well put. And just kind of realizing the how much of your job is to kind of evoke an emotion, uh, from
Yeah.
that the end, whoever the end user buyer is, and to really uh, emit whatever or the architect, the design team was trying to create, but make sure that it lands in the mind of the you know the desired or the design prospect or the buyer, whoever that may be, and kind of bridge that gap. Do you find ever that there is a like the what you're hearing from the design team doesn't equate with the what you're hearing from the when you do your research with the end user, the buyer user.
That happens. I mean, everyone's involved in their own process. The designer has so much on their hands. I mean, it's so much technical. Um, they have their initial designs, which by the end of the process, it may change completely. So, there's a lot of agreements and disagreements between creators and a piece of this puzzle. But I think this happens in all relationships. I mean, we can disagree with a spouse, but at the end of the day, we gotta create something together. So I think this collaboration is the base for all these things. It's not just getting paid. Um, for me, they say sex sells, but design sells. Good design will always be noticed, and you gotta work for it. You gotta sweat for it, you know. So it's always important that you keep your eyes on the ball and understand, how much you're spending. Doesn't need to be beautiful, of course, but put them both together, and you will probably get some problems, right? Beautiful stuff can is most of the time is expensive, but it doesn't have to be. And that's, getting creative and getting, more ideas on the table and doing amendments and stuff like that. It's always important, but you will always get clashes. We may not see them from our perspective because we sort of tend to come in at the end of the design process when everything is pretty much, or it has a sort of shape. I mean, we work with people with architects who just sat at the drawing board, and we could be there from day one of the design process, and it's super interesting. But we can also come at the end of the conversation when the building is already been approved and the developer just wants to sell it, and decisions are no longer being made. It's just, making stuff beautiful. Um, so I haven't emphasized enough, probably, but the power of collaboration, that's what makes great work, and I think can make this world great.
Um, Hey, one more question. Does the process work for both new construction as well as renovation, like a total remake of a property?
Oh yeah, yeah. So new construction doesn't exist. It needs to be built, whether it's getting built. Renovation can be a total overhaul. I mean, you may want to do these virtual stagings where you have a space, you have a room. You may not necessarily want to get furniture in there and do styling in the physical space because that is pretty expensive. But you can do a virtual one and show it to the client, to your prospect buyer or whoever. You can show it online, and you can just take that space and show a new styling, a new fit out inside of it. The building may get a new face. So how do you make sure that's the right thing? Approvals are the number one must-dos. You cannot build a building unless it got approved by the city. So you have to get there and have some verified views. By verified, I mean, they got to be extremely accurate. All the materials got to look right. All the specs got to be in. And those people who are going to make the decision, they'll probably expect the highest level of accuracy from you, the developer. So yes, for both, it's equally important, I believe. But you can get either this or that. They can skip those steps at their own peril.
Yeah, no, I would think it'd be well worth the you know going through this process as opposed to and not having a rock solid sense of what your outcome is or what your desired outcome is, only to be surprised when you get there. Wait, that's
Yeah.
not, at least for me, I found I'd much rather spend the money on getting a firm or better understanding as opposed to going along with something and find out when I got there it's too late that I've already spent the money. It's going to cost a lot more money to change or whatever. So I get it.
Getting visuals it must be part of the design process. I mean,
Yeah.
architects, most of them nowadays have the tools necessary to just take a look at what they're doing and not doing, I mean, doing it more responsibly than how it was back in the 80s when you had to, you know, get someone who's a good illustrator to show your building. But nowadays it's just almost built into the software that you're using, and it's almost just a click away. But you know, if you want to get at a higher level and you want to be you want to get a message across that is punchy and more interesting and more creative, just think of the advertising industry, these guys are doing. So you'll probably be surprised by one campaign or another, just because, you know, some people got together and, you know, thought of something that was so special and so interesting that um, got the attention of people. You know, I'm not saying we're one of the most creative industries out there because, you know, it depends who's doing it. Um, but you know, it is part of the design process, and it's part of the life cycle of any project of any building, from the
Yeah.
drawing board to construction to marketing, and then perhaps, you know, you can organize events to keep your brand alive, and you would still use virtual projections or things of that nature to activate spaces or you know, create the buzz around it. So it's a very powerful tool from my experience.
Yeah. No, I would concur. Hey, Tudor, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. By day, I'm an insurance broker, and as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if we can avoid the risk. If that's not an option, we look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And if we're not able to avoid nor minimize, we look to see if there's a way we can transfer the risk. That's what an insurance policy is. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. It could be your clients, you know, technology, um, economy, whatever it is that you see and consider to be the biggest risk. And again, for clarification, while I am an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so, if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Tudor Vasiliu, what is the biggest risk?
Well, that's a hard one. Um, I mean, I can speak about so many things, but at the end of the day, the base of how we interact with people and how people interact with each other, I believe, you know, from my standpoint, is empathy. Empathizing with your family, with your friends, with your clients, with everyone around you. I think that's a great way to navigate life. And the loss of empathy is when um, the bad things happen. And I think, you know, we can be seeing that across the world, and nowadays it's everywhere, and we're asking ourselves, why is that happening? Um, I don't think there's a easy answer to that, but you know, the answer for me is trying to keep alive that old sense of old time empathy that we were educated with. Um, you know, the values that our parents instilled in us, and the education instilled in us. And even if, you know, the world is so much faster nowadays and so much more selfish and so on. Why not, stick into those good old love and appreciation for the other. And I think this is the way we can make a better place, or make the world a better place, not losing that empathy. If we do lose it, I don't know, just slap out ourselves over the head and snap out of it, because it's not by being selfish and by being self-centered that we will make the world a better place or make an impact. So just caring for the other next to you, and with that attitude, just you would probably achieve a lot in life. That's how I'd see it, Darren.
Here, here. I can concur with all of that. That's well said. I appreciate that. Hey, Tudor,
Appreciate the
where?
question.
Oh, you bet. I appreciate you
It's amazing.
participating. Yeah. Where can listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Well, they can mainly go to our website, the Panopticon with a K.com, thepanopticon.com, or on Instagram, the.panopticon, at the.panopticon. Those are the main. If you look it up on Google, you would probably find our LinkedIn, our X, our Facebook, and everything and so forth. But mainly it's our website where we post projects when we get approval and the clients agree to us posting. And there's a lot of NDAs, always have been out there, but we're proud to show our work when we can. So I appreciate anyone taking a bit of their time to pay us a visit and drop me a line if they want to know anything about how we do stuff, and if I can help, even with my knowledge, help their process anytime. It's a pleasure for me.
Awesome. Well, Tudor Vasiliu, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, learned a lot, and look forward to doing it again soon.
I do appreciate the invitation, Darren. It's an amazing experience. Big up and big congratulations on your 100+ episodes so far. Just an amazing experience. I recommend anyone watching this to go on YouTube and see if they can skip through and just watch those guys sharing some super valuable information. For me, that's who's working in this industry, real estate and architecture. It's a wealth of information and it's free. So big up to Darren for putting this out there and putting in the work. So
Oh, I
thanks, Darren.
appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate that. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.